The market will break you if you let it, and I know, because I've been broken more than once. The market does not destroy a man in one sudden blow. It eats him alive in small bites, the way the ocean wears down a rock. The bite is never the first trade, it's the second, the third, the one you hold because you hope instead of know. That's why I say the real enemy is not the market, but the man staring back at you from the mirror. I have watched the tape long enough to know that prices are nothing more than reflections of human weakness, printed in black and white. And the cruelest trick of all is that the tape shows you exactly what you want to see when you are most desperate. I remember watching a stock climb in clean, deliberate steps, every tick confirming strength. I had taken my line modest at first, then added as the advance proved itself. My rule was simply ride the strength, but never give it the chance to turn on me. Then one morning the action shifted. The rise slowed, the volume thinned, and the rhythm that had carried it upward faltered. That was my cue. I cut part of the line, lightened up, waited. A younger version of myself would have sat tight, convinced the run had more to give, and more often than not, that conviction would have cost me the whole stake. The difference lies in discipline, the cold decision to obey the tape rather than the itch in your chest. Every winning move I've made came not from brilliance, but from patience. I wait until the market itself proves me right before I press further. The hardest lesson was learning that the best trades are often the ones I don't take. There is always temptation to anticipate, to get ahead of the move, to prove you can read what others cannot. But the market does not reward pride. It rewards timing, and timing belongs only to the man who can wait until the evidence is undeniable. When I add, I do it carefully, never in leaps, always in steps. Each addition must earn its place by showing profit. I do not throw good money after unproven positions. That is how men dig their own graves, by averaging down, by throwing capital into holes they cannot climb out of. A stock moving against me is not a bargain, it is a verdict. I respect that verdict and step aside, even when it cuts deep. It is better to lose a finger than an arm. Capital is a soldier, and every soldier must be protected. You don't send troops charging blindly into battle just to prove a point. You advance when the field favors you, and you retreat the moment it turns. Pride has no place in speculation. The market will strip it from you $1 at a time until nothing remains but regret. I have felt that hollow pit, watching the tape move without me, wishing I had obeyed my own rule, cursing my hesitation as losses mounted. It is a slow death, and once you've tasted it, you learn to move with more caution, more respect. I sit, I watch, I wait. I listen to the tape, not my heart. Every tick is a whisper, and discipline is what keeps the whispers from turning into shouts. A man who cannot master himself has no place on the street. The moment you betray your own rule, the market already has you by the throat. Discipline is the only thing that stands between a trader and the undertaker. I don't mean the kind of discipline men speak about casually, the sort that folds at the first sting of pain or the first rush of excitement. I mean the kind that cuts through your own flesh if need be, that forces you to act against every instinct clawing inside you. The market knows your weaknesses better than you do, and it will pull on them like a puppeteer, making you dance until you've handed over your last dollar. The only defense is discipline, cold and merciless. Even when it feels like betrayal of your own gut, I can still see the tape that taught me. A stock had been marching upward for days, every tick a drumbeat that pulled more fools into the parade. I was already in, early and right, and my account swelled with each move. Then came the day when the pace changed. The tape grew uneven, halts where there had been rhythm, spurts where there had been steady climbs. I knew what it meant. The easy money was finished. My rules told me to scale out, take the profit, lighten the load. But the voice of greed whispered otherwise, stay a little longer. The run isn't over. Don't miss the last rush. I had to choose between the tape and my hunger, and I cut the line. The next morning, the stock opened lower, then lower still, and within a week it had given back half its gain. I had escaped because I obeyed the rule, not the whisper. Discipline is most brutal when it demands you accept a loss. Nothing eats at a trader more than being wrong, and nothing tempts him more than the idea that time will rescue him. But the tape does not rescue, it condemns. I have watched men throw good money after bad, adding to losers in the hope of vindication, clinging to the notion that a stock owed them a rebound. It never does. I learned to treat every loss as a bullet fired in battle. You cannot stop it once it leaves the barrel. but you can decide whether to stand in its path. My rule is simple. If the trade turns against me beyond my line of defense, I step aside. No hesitation, no second chances. The cost of being wrong is small compared to the cost of refusing to admit it. Patience, too, is part of discipline. Most of the time, the tape is noise. Men who chase every wiggle end up broke, not because they lack courage, but because they lacked restraint. I've spent weeks watching, waiting for the one clean signal, the one move worth my risk. And when it comes, I act without delay, because hesitation kills as surely as recklessness. Discipline is not just about cutting losses. It is about waiting for the rare moment when everything aligns and then striking with precision. It is never easy. Every fiber of your being fights against it. The hand wants to hold a little longer. The pride wants to prove itself right. The fear wants to run too soon. Discipline silences them all. It is the knife you turn on yourself before the market does it for you. Without it, profit is only borrowed and loss is certain. With it, even when the tape runs cold, you live to fight the next battle. Discipline is cheap when the market is kind. Any fool can follow his rules when the tape moves in his favor, when profits pile up and every trade feels blessed. The true measure comes when the market turns against you, when fear gnaws at your insides or greed whispers that just one more hour, one more day will make you rich. That is when discipline costs something, when it burns to obey, when you must act against every urge that screams to do the opposite. I remember holding a position that had treated me well. The stock had risen in a steady climb, no wild spasms, no noise, just a clean, orderly march upward. I was riding it with care, adding as it proved itself, scaling like a soldier advancing under cover. Then came the first hesitation. The tape slowed, the volume thinned, the rhythm broke. It wasn't a collapse, just a pause, the kind that makes you wonder if the move is only catching its breath. My rules said lighten up, protect the profit, stand ready for reversal. My greed said stay put. This is only a rest before the next run. I cut half the line. 2 days later, the stock broke like a dam. The men who clung to it lost weeks of profit in a single afternoon. I saved mine because I followed the rule when it hurt to follow. But it cuts the other way, too. Fear will tell you to bolt too soon, to snatch at small gains because you don't trust the market to give more. I've sold out of trades at the first hint of profit, only to watch them march on without me, leaving me behind with nothing but crumbs. I learned that discipline is not just in the cutting, it is in the holding. When the tape speaks clear, when the strength is real, you must sit tight and let the market pay you. The easy way is to sell too early and call it caution. The harder way is to stay the course until the tape itself tells you to leave. That requires the same cold nerve as cutting a loss, maybe more. The battle is always inside. The tape itself is simple. It rises, it falls, it hesitates. The decision is never about what the market does. It is about whether you will listen to it or to yourself. In those moments of strain when fear or greed is loudest, the temptation to betray your discipline is strongest. That's why I say discipline is only discipline when it costs you something, when it feels like you're carving flesh from bone, when every instinct tells you to delay or disobey. If you can act in that moment, if you can obey the rule over the whisper, then you live to trade another day. And I wait, always watching for that test, knowing it will come. The tape doesn't care how ready I feel. It only cares whether I obey when the strain tightens its grip, when hesitation beckons and brains are cheap on the street. Discipline is dear. I've watched clever men talk themselves into disaster with arguments so polished you could shave in them. They saw patterns before they formed, wrote speeches to the market, insisted it would listen. It never does. The tape doesn't care for bright ideas. It cares for pressure, for timing, for the weight of real buying and selling. I learned to trust that weight more than my own opinion, and the day I did. The ledger stopped swinging like a saloon door. I remember a stock marching up straight as a rifle barrel. Every tick a steady step, every pullback shallow and quick. A friend of mine, sharp as a tack, called it overbought, said the move was exhausted, said the crowd was late. He shorted into strength twice. The tape ignored his brilliance and kept climbing. I was long, light to start, then a little more when the rise proved itself, then a touch again as it pushed through a stubborn price that had turned it back earlier in the week. Each ad paid for the next. I kept my hand near the cutoff line, the one I draw before I ever trade a share. No speeches, just rules. When the march finally wobbled, no panic, just the rhythm breaking, the bids not as eager. I trimmed, then trimmed again, and let the last piece ride with a tight leash. My friend said I lacked conviction. I said I preferred cash to conviction. He bled for his cleverness. I got paid for my patience. Another time, I had an opinion so fine I nearly framed it. The story was perfect. The stock should have risen. But the tape stalled, then leaned the wrong way. My pride wanted to wait it out. The rules said get out. I cut and took the loss while it was still a paper cut. That same afternoon it slipped a little more, then a little more, and by the close it was a full wound. The old me would have stood there and argued with the knife. The new me left the room. Capital lived to see another fight. Discipline is the quiet art of letting the market do the talking. I don't anticipate the parade. I fall in line once the band is already playing. When I add, I make the market earn the right. The position must be paying me before I give it another dollar. And the moment it stops paying, I ask why I'm still there. Most of the time, I'm not. The world calls that caution. I call it rent, what I pay to keep a seat at the table when others are being shown the door. I've seen clerks with modest means last longer than scholars because they kept to simple rules like a metronome weight. Confirm, press the good, cut the bad, guard the stake. I've seen professors vanish because they refused to bow to a line in the sand. The market is a furnace, ideas burn, money melts, only temper remains. So I keep watch, counting the beats of the tape, feeling for that moment when the crowd breathes in or out, letting the move show its teeth before I offer my hand, and when the first bite comes, I pull back without argument, ready to step again only if the tape invites me, only if. The market has no mercy. It doesn't know your rent is due, doesn't care you sat up all night studying its moods. Won't spare you because you were careful yesterday. The tape is a cold ledger. It pays when you are right and fines you when you are wrong, and it does both without a flicker of feeling. I learned to respect that indifference more than any man's opinion, including my own. When you trade with the idea that the market owes you something, you're already on the funeral train. I remember a morning when everything looked friendly. The stock had been moving well for a week. Clean climbs, tidy rest, nothing wild. I held a small line, taken on a clear push through a stubborn price. I added a little as it kept proving itself, each new share bought with the market's money, not my hope. Then at the open, the bids didn't greet it. They stared. A few trades went off lower, then lower again. Quick little stabs that made the chart look like a picket fence. I felt that old heat in the chest, the one that whispers, it's only a shakeout, hold your nerve. But the tape wasn't whispering. It was speaking plain. The eager hands had stepped back. I trimmed first not because I knew the day's end, but because the rhythm changed, and I respect rhythm more than wishes. An hour later, the stock made a feeble try upward, failed at the same level it once sailed through, and sank. I cut the rest. Men around me grumbled about manipulation. I counted my remaining soldiers and kept them dry. That same week, another name started to walk right. You could feel the steady pressure, the kind that doesn't shout. It nudged through resistance, rested without losing ground, then nudged again. I took a starter and did nothing. No heroics, no trying to predict the next tick. When it proved the level from above, stood on it like a floor. I added. It worked, and then it didn't, and when it didn't, I took some off, no drama. When it worked again, I pressed a little, always with the rope tied short. This is how you stay alive in a heartless market. You pay for confirmation with patience, and you buy size with profit, not with pride. The market won't rescue you because you're underwater. It won't congratulate you because you're ahead. It will tempt you to add to losers under the banner of courage, and it will tempt you to strangle winners under the banner of prudence. Discipline keeps you from marching under either false flag. If a position moves against me beyond the line I set when I was calm, I sell. I don't argue, I don't bargain, I don't wait for a miracle. If a position moves in my favor, I let it carry me until the tape, not my nerves, says the ride is over. Capital is breath. When the market puts its hand on your throat, you don't negotiate. You duck, you shield, you live to take the next clean signal. I watch for it now. The quiet build, the pressure that doesn't brag, the kind of move that doesn't need my belief to continue. Losses are part of the fare. You pay them to ride. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling a lullaby. I've taken my share more than once, and each time the bill arrived the same way. Quiet at first, a subtle change in the tape, a breath that doesn't fill the lungs. The trick isn't to dodge every loss. You won't. The trick is to keep them from turning fatal, to make them the cost of doing business instead of the end of it. I remember a morning that looked harmless. The stock had given me a clean entry 2 days earlier, pushed through a stubborn line, held it from above, and walked higher with orderly steps. I bought small, then added when it proved itself again. It paid me for each addition. Then came the open. No panic, no news, just a different feel. The bids that used to chase now waited. Trades printed a touch lower, then lower again, like a drumbeat under a funeral. I trimmed first, lightening the load, because the rhythm had changed. Then the stock tried to climb back and failed at the very price that once acted like a springboard. That was my line in the sand, drawn when I was calm. I sold the rest. It drifted down all afternoon, and by the close it was a dull ache. The loss wasn't pleasant, but it was measured. I slept that night with capital intact. Ruin arrives when a trader tries to argue with the tape. I've done it. I've averaged into holes and called it courage. I've begged time to fix what judgment spoiled. Time has no interest in rescue. That lesson was expensive. Nowadays, when a trade crosses the level that was supposed to hold, I'm gone. Not because I love being wrong, but because I love staying alive. You can rebuild from a flesh wound. You cannot rebuild from a severed artery. Patience saves as much as the knife. Most days, the market is just noise. I wait for the heavy breath, the kind of pressure that doesn't shout. When it shows, I take a starter and do nothing. I let the position prove it deserves another dollar. If it does, I add with care. If it falters, I cut without pride. I'm not hunting for perfection. I'm guarding the war chest. Capital is breath. Once you lose it, even the right idea is worthless. There was a week when I took 3 small losses in a row. No heroics, no revenge. Each trade looked promising, each flinched, each got the same treatment. I felt the sting in my ego more than the ledger. But on the 4th setup, the tape moved like a train leaving the station. No hesitation, bid stepping up, pull back shallow. I put the first piece on, then added as it paid, always with the leash short. That winner carried the week, not because it was spectacular, but because the earlier cuts left me solvent in nerve and funds. Losses opened the door. Discipline kept me standing when the right move finally arrived, when I hear a trader promise, no losses. I hear a man building his own gallows. Losses come. Let them be small, swift, and forgotten. Let winners be slow, deliberate, and paid for by the market itself. I keep my rules close, my positions light until proven, my exits written before entry. I watch the tape breathe and I match its pace, stepping forward only when it invites me, stepping back the moment it turns cold. Endurance is the dividend that pays when all the glamour is gone. Quick money is a spark. It blinds a man and burns his fingers. What keeps you in the chair day after day is the slow furnace of habit, waiting, watching, holding your fire until the market itself gives permission. I learned that the hard way when I could feel my heart sprinting ahead of the tape and my capital panting behind it. The street doesn't pay sprinters. It pays distance men who keep their feet under them when the road turns to mud. Most mornings I start with nothing but a clean ledger and a stubborn patience. The tape opens loud, gaps chatter, little bursts of noise that make the inexperienced lunge. I let it run past me. I'm not here to be first, I'm here to be right. The stock I've stalked for days will show its hand if I let it. One push through a stubborn price means nothing by itself. I want to see it step over the line, then stand there and breathe without losing ground. Only then do I put on a light piece, small enough to be a scout, not an army. If the tape holds that new ground through the first shake, I let the scout call for a second. If it doesn't, I call him home and count my men. That's endurance, money in reserve, nerve in reserve, no rush to prove I'm clever. When I add, I make the market pay for the privilege. I want my position to be feeding me before I feed it. The moment the rhythm breaks, a stutter where there had been stride, a failure where there had been confidence, I trim without discussion. The tape owes me nothing, and I owe it my respect. That respect is not weakness. It is endurance. It means I live to press when the next clean run appears, not bleed to death defending a hill that has already been overrun. There are weeks when nothing lines up. I sit like a sentinel on a cold wall, hands still, mind sharp, letting setups pass because they don't meet the bar I set when I was calm. The ego complains, wants a taste, begs for action just to feel alive. I let it talk and do nothing. Capital is like breath in winter. You see how quickly it leaves you. I hold it close until the right wind arrives. Then, when the tape finally shows that quiet pressure, the bid stepping up, pull back shallow, failed breaks that don't dig deeper, I step in modestly and let the market prove I deserve to stay. If it does, I press a little. If it doesn't, I step back and leave the crowd to their arguments. Endurance means you take small losses like tolls and treat big wins like work, not miracles. It means you refuse to settle old scores with new trades. It means you measure yourself by how well you kept your rules on the dull days, not how loudly you cheered on the bright ones. The street will test your legs with boredom and your lungs with panic. Pass both and you'll still be standing when others are picking splinters from their pride. I'm standing now, watching a level that's been hammered all week, feeling the tape's breath ease in and out, waiting for that steady nod that says the road is firm underfoot, and when it comes I'll step, not leap. The market is a hard master, and it teaches with a whip, not a whisper. I've felt the sting of ruin, the hollow ache of watching fortunes slip through my fingers, and I've felt the steady weight of victory earned by nothing more glamorous than patience and rule, keeping. In the end, all the brilliance, all the clever talk, all the desperate hope, it crumbles. What stands is discipline. It is the steel in the spine, the calm hand on the trigger, the habit that saves a trader from himself when the market bares its teeth. Without it, collapse is certain. With it, survival is possible, and survival, gentlemen, is the only road to fortune in the endless war of speculation.